What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our Bulletproof Dental Practice podcast. It's Craig and Pete, and we're coming to you solo to talk to you about debt and finances.
Debt and
so
finances.
Bad.
It does sound bad, actually. When you say that, it's the D word, right?
It is like death and debt. Ugh.
Well, I was telling you before we hit record that I like to walk in the morning and walk my dog. It's my quiet time. It's when I get to think. I think in movement. And I was thinking about, I actually recorded kind of a something on my my voice recorder on my iPhone. It was too scratchy to publish, but it was really about like debt. And like, I think now is a great time where actually, Craig, let me pause. I was talking about my experience recently about refinancing a lot of my debt.
Oh, that's such a cool move.
Right? Because right now we're in unusually low interest rates.
Yeah.
Right.
And by the way, money is really easy to get when you don't need it and really hard to get when you do need it.
Well, remember it back in the day, right? And I actually did talk about that a little bit. Right now, in this most recent refinancing, I had two banks fighting, and it was great to kind of say like, all right, he'll do 3.3, will you do 3.25? And banks don't like to lose to each other because then they want to have this debt on their balance sheet because it's dental debt and it's a good debt to have, right? So they don't want to lose the battle to someone else. So,
and by the way, when I was building my building back in 2010, 11, I could not get a freaking bank to say yes to my loan package. It was incredible. I mean, literally I had 5 different banks reject me. One of the banks actually rejected me at the closing table. So I told my GC, my construction company, that we were approved. And at the last minute, they pulled the plug on me. And then this same exact bank 4 years later, after I built my building, sent me this flyer back in 2015 saying, hey, we do 105% financing now. I'm like, dude, I wanted you for an 80% LTV, meaning I had 20% equity to put down and they wouldn't touch me. And now they do 105% financing. So I could have built my building and had 5% extra cash flow. So I was like,
which seems a little 2008-ish to me, but meaning I remember buying my first home and literally walking. I had no money. Literally, I had like $100 in my checking account, bought a condo for like $150,000 that I got approved for, but no money down. I remember leaving the table with like $20,000. Like, how is this possible? Like, what? This doesn't seem fair or legal or whatever. But anyway, buddy, let's talk about
I want to say one more thing too, because a buddy of mine just texted me this. So this came out on Fox Business yesterday. JP Morgan Chase reports record profit for 2019. Guess what their profit was?
JP Morgan
Chase for 2019. What would you think is a big profit for a bank?
I don't know, 20 billion?
Yeah, so 36.4 billion.
That's crazy.
So their earnings surged as consumer loans and credit card spending increased. So yeah, so banks are raking.
Well, let's go back into that for a second. Like why you and I, when we say the debt word, we both kind of cringe. But what I've learned over the years is that, I have a lot of debt, Craig. So do you.
Well, you didn't as much. Like when we first became friends, you were really quite debt averse. I think what's changed for you is lower interest rates has made it, you have
and the fact of shifting my mentality of the fact that like there's debt. Is it performing debt or unperforming debt?
Non-performing, yeah.
Like your house, unfortunately, is pretty unperforming, other than it brings a lot of value and happiness to your family, right?
Which is also a good ROI, by the way. So when we talk about ROI, don't just think about money. Marriage is a really shitty ROI because 60% of them end in divorce. Right. Kids are a really bad ROI monetarily, but spiritually.
But because you can't rent your house out because you're currently living there, it's a non-performing asset.
Well, it's illiquid. It's hard to get the money back out of it.
No, okay.
It's an illiquid. I want to put a pin on the house thing for 1 second. Oh, but I want to go back to that, by the way.
All right. Well, so student loan debt. So a lot of student loan debt, unfortunately, is an unperforming asset. Yes, you have the knowledge that now you can perform with it, but it's an unsecured uncollateralized debt, which when you go to banks and look to borrow more money, they look at that and say, oh shit, right?
We
Because
can't collateralize
no
that.
one can repossess your brain or whatever, right? Versus if you buy a building at, they'll give you great interest rates, and you can then, obviously the bank feels a little warm and fuzzy about it, because then if something happens, they can repossess the building, which they don't want to do, but at least there's collateral to back up.
It's warm and fuzzier, I should say. Well, it depends on who wins the 2020 election. We may not have to worry about student debt. So it could be
if
that
Bernie wins, right, it'll all be wiped out.
All of it wiped out. So sucks for you guys that just finished off paying your student loans out there.
Yeah.
Because now you're paying off all your buddies' student loans as well. But
one thing that is helpful, though, Greg,
political.
Actually, you talk about like paying stuff off, right? So a lot of times people be like, "Oh, you should pay your house off, and you should pay this off."
No. Let's talk about the house for a second.
Wait. Hold on. Don't hold on. So
okay, I'm excited, Pete. You got me excited.
I know you are. But what I would encourage someone listening to do is write down all of your debt, write down your interest rate, write down the monthly cash flow that's coming off of that. And so the ones that are most abusive to your cash flow with the worst interest rate, put the crosshairs on those, right? Don't try and pay all your debt down all at once. Put the crosshairs on one, probably more than likely your student loans, if you have them. Because Craig, they're probably like, I found out what some of the interest rates are, and they're in the 6s and 7s. The student loans.
You shouldn't speak in such broad terms, because some of our listeners can have credit card loans at 24.5%.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's a very real thing. That's really oppressive. We talk about the magic of compounding interest. I think, who was it that says one of the 5th or 6th wonders of the world, compounding interest? I think it was Einstein. Einstein actually made that quote, like how magical having your money work for you is, but in the same amplitude that it can be beneficial for you. It can work against you.
Yeah.
So, but the house, I want to talk about the house just for 1 second, because I have a lot of really savvy friends that are wealthy and just really understand this stuff. It's really hard to get the money back out of your house once you put it in. It's very difficult to refinance your house. There's doc stamps. It's very inefficient to try to borrow against your house, because it's the amount of taxes and documentation and fees that go along with it can really be oppressive. So one of the things that you can always add more money to your house, but it's hard to take it out. So that's one thing that if you're in a rush to pay off different things, that's probably one thing I'd put a longer play on. People, a 30-year mortgage at a low rate,
do not pay that off, actually. And I'm glad you're bringing this up, Craig. I think it's unwise, unless you feel as though the money that you're going to put towards that, reducing the capital amount, unless you feel like you can't make your money find a place to work harder than 3.5% or 4% or whatever your interest rate is at, do not pay it down.
Well, it also depends on what state you live in too, and the mortgage tax deductions, because having a 3.5% or 4% mortgage in certain areas of our country, that could be a tax deductible expense. Your net effect of the mortgage could wind up being 1.5%, or 1.9%.
Totally. Yeah, the net to you. And there's there's financial arbitrage, right? So if I have $100,000 and I can either pay down my house, right, and quote unquote make 3.5% that I was paying, or I could take that leverage, take that $100,000, find a building that has a cap rate of, let's call it 8 or 9%.
Yeah, it's just going to be hard these days, but yeah.
Well, okay, all right, let's call it 8. So let's say you can borrow.
Call it 6. And by the way, cap rate, just so the listener understands, is the rate of return after all expenses are paid.
It's the return on something you're buying, right? So if you can borrow money at 3.5% or 4% for a building, and you're getting an 8% return, you're making 4% on borrowed money. That's leverage.
That's why cap rates are shrinking, by the way, because mortgage interest rates are so low.
And they're printing so much money, which is another thing that I think is important to talk about. Is that another reason you asked that I was debt averse in the beginning. And this is my own personal thoughts. This is my own personal contention. We probably should have made the disclaimer. This is not financial advice and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, we're not pretending to give any here.
Yeah,
I don't think any, but this is just the podcast, people. We're having fun. We're just
you and I talking.
Yeah.
But hear me out for a second. Here's why I'm, again, another reason why I'm a little bit more risk.
Or debt averse.
I'm not debt averse, right? Is because I'm seeing what the government is doing and printing so much money right now, right? We're at $23 trillion. Inflation rates are rising. When I sign a document, let's call it $1 million for a building, okay? What it's basically saying is, Peter, you owe $1 million. Now, whether or not that at the time I sign it, a hamburger may cost $3.
Inflated related dollars. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
But in years, let's say we experience hyperinflation, which none of us want to do, right? But the government just turns on the printing press and turns all this money.
Well, we're going to experience inflation. Inflation happens.
Well, inflation happens.
You don't have to talk about hyperinflation. The CPI is what, 2 or 3%. The cost of $100 today and $100 in 5 years is very, very different.
Very different.
Very different.
So let's just say we experience that where the printing press is on massively, but now because your money is being diluted, I still only owe back the same US dollar that I signed on the dotted line. So potentially there could be a windfall. So not only am I making arbitrage on my dollars of buying something, I'm actually able to experience leverage by only putting down 20%, but buying $1 million asset. And then third, if there is inflation, I get to potentially be the beneficiary. Yeah. Right. So this is how you build wealth.
Right. And it's like, and a very inspirational podcast that Peter and I listened to is Naval Ravikant. And Naval, he's just a total brain. And one of the things he says is doctors and lawyers and people like us who trade time for money don't ever really get rich. And the reason is we make a steady income that swells over time, but it just so happens that it keeps up with our increase in our spending. So I know plenty of ultra wealthy people that make like millions of dollars per year, but they don't have the cash to like do anything with it. They don't have a secure nest egg. And I know people that make $100,000 a year and they're rich as hell. Right. So it really comes down to your burn rate and controlling your spending. And I'm going to throw my hat in this ring too. I have this belief system, and I'm 48. So I've been a dentist for 21 years and I've seen it. I've seen when I made like $200,000, I'm like, oh shit, when I make 400, oh my God, I'll be able to put away so much more, but everything swells in relationship to what we earn. So if you're earning 5 and 8% more, but spending 6 and 12% more, you're going to wind up really freaking stressed about money. And there's people that make $1 million or more dollars a year, and they're really freaking stressed about money. Yep. So that, it's really important. And that one thing I love about commercial loans or any type of, passive investment like that is it's a forced savings account. You will pay your mortgage. If you don't pay your mortgage within 30 days, you get a penalty on that. So it's like a savings account with a due date. We all say we're going to save more in 2020 and we're going to put more money aside. But if you don't write the check, no one's writing you a letter back saying you better pay this. So for those who have their own practices and they're paying down mortgages on either their practice loans or their buildings, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to look at your end of year, what you made. And then I want you to pull out your amortization schedule or look at your bank statement and see how much principal you paid down on any of your loans. Mm-hmm. And I want you to add that to what you made this year. I talked to a guy who was all depressed. He's like, I used to be an associate in a practice and I made X dollars and made $100,000 a year. Now I own my own practice. I'm only making 120. I was like, okay, what did your practice grow? He's like, well, I grew from like 600 to $1 million. I'm like, so what do you think it's worth? Is it worth 70% of 1 year's gross? He's like, yeah, probably 70%. So I'm like, I want you to add that to what you made this year too. And by the way, did you pay down any debt? Yeah, I paid down $36,000 in principal. I want you to add that to what you made too. So, we're used to being like, there's a lot of
instead of, I love how you're making the distinction. So that person, you put that person in the mindset. I actually have looking at it right now, it's a spreadsheet. I don't really track, well, what did I make last year? I look at what is my net worth, right? Did I pay down debt? Did assets increase? Did spending go down? Right. And so you're making
net worth is a little bit mental masturbation too. This whole thing is just mental masturbation because, net worth.
So at all, what are you talking about?
What do you mean?
It is not.
Yeah, it is because it's like, no, net worth is real and it's a real, it's a real thing. But what
You
you're
will not mentally masturbate over my net worth.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because I'll tell you right now, what's your net worth? It's a presumption that your house is worth X, your practice is worth
All
three
right.
X, your
So
things are
there's
worth.
some subjectivity. I get it.
There's
I hear you.
subjectivity, and
But
what it really matters is these are all illiquid expenses or illiquid assets rather. And if you need to sell them quickly, it's hard to get full value for them. So your house may be worth 500 grand, but if you need to sell it in 3 weeks, it's probably
yeah,
not going to be worth
it's
500
probably
grand.
worth 300 grand, right?
Right. So all I'm saying is that the exercise of this mental masturbation I keep referring to is that if you're going to go through it all, find out all the stuff that you did, find out, like really get an apples to apples conversation. And the thing I love about performing debt is that as you pay down principal, it is a savings account for yourself, which I
Right.
love.
No,
And you've been really good at that, Pete. Every time Pete's bank account swells, he buys a property. Some people, every time their bank account swell, they buy a Ferrari. So that's,
well, it's my forced savings, right? Because
yeah,
I would probably opt to buy the Ferrari, but if you let it sit there too long, so I
you'll buy something stupid. Put it
buy
that
something
way.
stupid. You do when you sit there and
Yeah.
you just aggregate ones and zeros. You are like, you feel, if you quote unquote feel rich,
Yeah.
right? You end up your lifestyle falls in sync. So I like to keep myself very poor.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
You brought up something else about Naval, and I think it warrants us talking about it. Craig, that podcast that you and I listened to, that's a 3-hour where Naval Ravikant, who is just literally, if I could pick one person to spend the day with, it would be
outside
him.
of me. Yeah, I know.
Well, that's true. But anyway, they basically compose, and if you get on his podcast, you can see it says all episodes, and he named it. It was a tweet storm. Actually, it started as a tweet storm, but he named it like how to get rich or how to get wealthy or whatever, which I don't really love the title, but he talks about all things in life. I loved it so much, Craig, that I actually found the transcript.
I appreciate you doing that. That was awesome.
And I sent that to you, right? And had it printed and bound, because I think it's just like it's like a legacy read, meaning I actually I got a copy of this, printed it, gave it to all my best buddies, and then put a couple in my gun safe so that one day my son can have this. I mean, that's how like transformative the data in here is. The information, if you can dwell on it. So I'm going to put that, I should put that link in the podcast. I mean, in the notes,
sure.
or anyway, but I'm glad you touched on that because Naval's amazing with a capital A.
For sure he is.
All right. Anything else to add on debt? I think that's cool. I think step one would be, if you have debt that's tied to collateral, like either a practice or a building or something else, look at refinancing. And if your bank doesn't do it, ask the neighboring bank. It's good to get, when banks compete, you win in that lending tree.
Yeah, exactly.
I was able, Craig, because they didn't want to lose my business. Check this out. Instead of having to refinance and go through origination and all that stuff, origination is the amount they charge you to actually do the loan. So usually it's 1% or 0.5%. But so if it's $1 million loan, they charge you $10,000 to do the loan. I was able to remodify my loans with a $500 modification fee only. I didn't have to refinance. I didn't have to go through underwriting. They just did it because they didn't want to lose the business and me to go across the street to the other guy. So,
and remember one thing, people, it's not because Pete's so great. It's the time that we're in right now.
Yeah.
When so I know no one needs the money right now and everything's going well and the economy's booming, but winter's coming. Economies are cyclical. It always is. We're on the most massive long bull market we've ever had. So a recession or a pullback is normal.
Yeah. Your 2022 self could thank you very much for acting right now.
Right. And it's very easy to do it when you don't need the money, but when you do. So if your house needs to be refinanced, if your business needs to be refinanced, it's the time to do it. I mean, I refinanced.
It's a pain in the ass. It's a pain in the ass, but spend the time. You just did. You refinanced right recently.
Well, I refied like 8 months ago. Okay, so
that's in the window.
I'm at 3.5, which is pretty cool.
Dude, that's amazing. That's amazing.
By the way, a little piece of advice too. So I used the bank, like an online bank. It was pretty cool. And I refied and I got a rate. It was 3.87. And I was like doing we were working on the closing, and I had no idea that banks have to do this, but the rates dropped again after 2 weeks. I locked the rate in, but I hadn't fully executed the documents yet. We were waiting on the appraisal and all that shit. And I called them up and just that, I was like, what the hell? I'll just call my loan officer and see if they can do anything with the rate. Cause I made the headlines that day rates went down. So I called and they're like, yeah, actually we can rewrite your loan and we'll save you, 50 G's over the lifetime of your loan. I'm like, what? So banks, there's a law that they
Well,
have
not
to
even
on,
that. Most importantly, your cash flow. You're like you
but they
probably.
have to. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would a bank, I signed a deal with a bank. Why would you,
Yeah,
just because
it's truth in lending laws.
I know, but
Correct.
that's such a favorable law for the consumer that they
Well,
have
let's
to
take
do that.
advantage of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point of the conversation.
Second piece of advice is if you have consumer debt, do not pay anything else down until that done. And I say consumer, I mean actually student loan. I'm going to put that in the consumer bucket because it's non-collateralized, it's unsecured. Pay down your student debt. I know that's easier said than done, but do not even have the conversation about I'm going to buy or pay down other debt, and like get rid of those. Get that off of your personal balance sheet ASAP, because it'll help free up for when you do want to go buy a house, or you want to get a bigger house, or another a commercial building or something. Getting that
Funny thing,
unsecured debt off your balance sheet will put you in a favorable standpoint with the lender.
and one of the reasons why Pete and I are so passionate about this is that statistic that 90% of us dentists cannot retire by the time we're 65. That is is it 90 or 95%?
No. It's only 10. Yeah, you're saying the exact same thing. It's only 10% of dentists can retire at age 60, given the current lifestyle that they have.
So there's two things that suck about that. We make a lot of money as dentists. It's always in the top 5 professions. We're really high earners, but yet we're not able to retire. That comes down to the fact of two things, I think. Number one, we oftentimes spend more than we make. We spend more than we should. And number two, we are so easily preyed upon by financial institutions. Pete and I could write another book about the things that we've been through as far as that I would consider financially abusive. We are relationship people as dentists. We build long-term relationships with our patients. So when someone comes in with a really cool whole life policy and they like us, they want to take us, to the Atlanta Falcons game or the Miami Heat, we're like, oh, this guy must really like me. I had a guy once tell me, oh, I'm going to take you to Nobu, and do you like the Miami Heat? I'm like, shit, I love it. Why? He's like, I just really like you. I came to find out like this guy's just a huge broker dealer and makes tons of commissions off of me, and I see
hurt your
what
feelings, didn't it, buddy?
well,
It hurt
not
your
only,
feelings.
well, it just sucks to be preyed upon. And I go on these Facebook chat rooms and these, dental investment, this and business of dentistry and all that stuff. And I see people that are not dentists, they're brokers and they're advising dentists. And we all just assume they're dentists. Like, oh, it's a really good thing I did. And I'll always ask the question like, hey, are you a dentist? Well, actually, no, my wife is, but I'm one of the largest guys for Guardian Life Insurance. And it just sucks because I know Samir Puri, the guy from Sarai Doctors.
Yeah.
He is such a smart guy from a financial standpoint, and he just argues to the benefit of the dentist. And they're still like, no, but it's such a good thing for me to do. And we get preyed upon, and we have so much bad advice. And it just sucks that we do such a noble profession and we help people for a living.
I want to give Samir a shout out. I've never met him, and he's been one of the most influential mentors to me. I met him actually as a dental student on Dental Town, and he took the time he's a few years older than me, and literally just a great guy. I really want to meet him one day. I know
he's a badass. He's super kind. He puts his heart into things, and the work that he's done trying to educate the other dentists that I've seen on just the financial stuff. Like he's just taken off his CEREC hat and putting on another hat of like, look, here's the math, and I'll go through.
You're really passionate about this aspect of dentistry. I have to tell you, I'm just going to brag on you for a second. And I don't know if it's because of the pain you went through, and you and I both went through.
It's the pain.
And you probably had a little bit more just because.
Well, I got vicarious pain because I was in this consulting company that I won't mention, and part of the group we'd meet for these like ultra high level masterminds, and there was a herd effect. It was a really perverse thing that was going on where everybody just trusted each other. Like, well, Pete's in it and Joe's in it. I'm sure these guys are great.
Meanwhile, there was like brokers and commissions and like
shit tons,
just biased products all over the place.
$36,000 a year I invested in a product that made no money whatsoever. So, and that was for years. It was
What does
hundreds of
that
thousands.
company rhyme with? You can't say it.
No. Don't even go there. Don't even go there. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. It's fine. It's fine.
I'll expose them.
No, don't do it. It's not even fair. It's fine. I mean, listen, if you have a savvy advisor and that's a portion of your portfolio, that can make sense. And there's obviously things, I don't want to get into tax advice, but if you're ultra wealthy, there's certain products that make sense for you. But for the average guy, I mean, even Ray Dalio, the most iconic investor, like he's the guy who wrote Principles, and he has that all-weather fund. He's routinely beat the market by shit tons. He didn't beat the market this past year. The S&P went up to 26%, and you can get the S&P for 8 basis points. So you could actually be paying an advisor, overpaying an advisor for underperformance. And it just sucks because I know so many dentists like myself that were doing that. And it's such a travesty because here we are trying to help dentist Pete make more money. And then in the same level, there's other guys that are just coming in and preying on them.
That's why I'm glad to see, like, the Creative Plannings of the world and the Reese Harpers of the world, like making sure that it's Greg, make sure I'm saying it right. It's an RIA.
Yeah, registered independent advisor. But the Creative Plannings and the Reese Harpers represent like 1% of the world. So if there was 50 more Reese Harpers and 50 more Creative Plannings, it wouldn't make a dent. Still 99% of the guys out there are just charging you out the butt,
This is your new war cry. I can feel it.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it. And then we had Peter Maluk on, who's a total rock star.
Total rock star.
Total rock star.
So, all right, buddy. I think that's good. I think we gave a lot of value in giving people talking about debt and giving direction, and we threw in big words like arbitrage, which I was really happy about because
what does that mean exactly?
What does arbitrage mean?
Yeah, I'm just joking with you.
Oh,
I Googled it.
You didn't know what it meant?
No, I'm kidding. I know.
Oh.
I know what it meant.
It's
I
like
just
my
wanted
favorite.
to be funny. I know. You stopped using meritocracy, by the way. So
well, I'm gonna,
cool.
I go in cycles. It's the seasons of my vocabulary.
So this is arbitrage season?
Yeah, this is arbitrage season. Soon we'll be in meritocracy and binary mode.
Oh yeah, binary can't go far.
Yeah, can't go far without binary.
Hey, how's Bitcoin doing? Speaking of arbitrage season.
Hey, you know what? It is doing well.
It's doing just fine and dandy.
It was the number one. What was you talked about the S&P? You know what the number one best performing asset? I just said that with Peter Maluk, and he was kind of
oh god, I can't
best performing asset. Why, dude? Who cares? He puts his pants on one leg like me.
Dude, you know Bitcoin? I don't check this because you're the Bitcoin monster. In 1 month, you know what it's gone up in percent?
Like 20.
Last month,
27%.
I had no idea. I guess it was the Iran scare, huh?
Well, we talk here. So,
speaking of Iran, I don't get too
tangential. Hold on.
Wait. Did you see Patrick Bet David on Iran?
Yeah. Well, he's had that video, dude.
No, he just did another one.
Fresh, because he's from Iran.
I know, but it was like he gave a history of the Middle East like no one could, and I don't think he could have said half the stuff he said without being Iranian.
Like honestly,
he's a fucking badass
beast. Like I don't know why everyone doesn't know him more than like.
Oh, they will. Don't worry, they will.
All right.
So go on with your thing.
So wait, you talked about Bitcoin and we talked about inflation, and that is one of the aspects why I really love Bitcoin.
Oh god.
It's because it's the only thing that we have that's anti-inflationary.
Oh god.
All right, fine. I'll leave it alone.
I know. Just leave it alone. We had so much good advice, and then people are going to be like, "Oh," and then he went to Bitcoin.
Well, I'm not saying you should buy it. I'm just saying, look, it's a hedge. It's a hedge.
Hey, listen, Pete, you said it yourself. You said one of us, history will prove one of us right. I talked so much shit on you at the DIA convention in Los Angeles, and it went up like 200% since then.
400%.
Oh, whatever. So yeah. I am not in a position to talk any crap.
No, it's fun. It's fine. All right, you're right. I won't go down that. Obviously, everyone knows I like blockchain shit, but yeah. But anyway, buddy, that was a great podcast, and I'm really excited to getting ready to share the stage with you. It feels like it's been a while. It's been since Vancouver, so I'm ready to have 2 intensive days of Spodakness.
All right, I'm ready to have some boldness.
Yeah, it's just boldness.
Boldness is fine. Yeah,
in Houston, and
tickets are still available. By the way, we got 45 days out. Grab your hygienist. No.
I'm just kidding. I think there's some. Yeah,
there might be some tickets left, but if there is, definitely do it.
But it is definitely the biggest one so far. We're crushing it this year. It's with people coming, and people are excited just like we are. So,
very excited.
Very excited. All right, buddy. Got anything else?
No, sir. Good to see you. Good talk today. And,
all right, brother.
Guys, keep it bulletproof.
keep it bulletproof. Over and out. Until next time, everyone.